In this video, I'm going to tell you this thrilling biblical story. Together, we'll get to know the exciting tale of Micaiah in the Bible. Micaiah faced powerful enemies, and his faith never wavered, a brave prophet who confronted the great challenge of delivering the word of God. I hope these words inspire you. You know that cool guy named Micaiah who appears in the Bible in the Old Testament? Well, he was like a super prophet around 800 years before Jesus was born. At that time, there were some really important kings, Ahab in Israel and Jehoshaphat in Judah. Micaiah was awesome because he wasn't afraid to speak what was right, even when it could get him in trouble. When Ahab and Jehoshaphat decided to wage war against some guys called Syrians, Micaiah warned that it was going to cause trouble. But Ahab preferred to believe in some false prophets who only said good things. The result? The battle was a total disaster, exactly as Micaiah had said. Ahab, stubborn as he was, ignored the warning and ended up losing badly to the Syrians. And Micaiah had already said that would happen. Even with everyone against him, Micaiah didn't change his mind. He remained firm in what he knew to be true, even if it caused him a headache. And the lesson of courage and loyalty that he left us is super important, right? It shows that we always need to be honest, even when it seems easier to follow the crowd. The story of the prophet Micaiah is truly fascinating. You know, he stood out for prophesying things that the Israelites, well, let's say they weren't exactly eager to hear. He brought to light what many preferred to ignore. Micaiah prophesied about King Ahab and the inevitable defeat of the Israelites against the Syrians. It's incredible how he had that courage, right? As for the meaning of the name Micaiah, it's really interesting. It means, who is like Jehovah. Incredible, isn't it? This name is so powerful and full of meaning. And the coolest part is that, in the Bible, Micaiah isn't alone. There are 6 other people with the same name. It's like a brand, a strong identity that perpetuates itself. If you want to know more about who Micaiah was, what he did, and how his story unfolded, you need to watch this video. In it, I'll tell you everything the Bible tells us about this brave prophet and his impactful prophecies. So, have you subscribed to the channel yet? Check it out. That way, you won't miss any new content that I'm preparing. I can't wait to share more fascinating stories like this one with you. You know, it's interesting to note that in the Bible, sometimes, this name appears abbreviated, like Micah. Micah or Micaiah, as mentioned in the biblical narrative, plays a crucial role in the context of the coalition of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom against Syria. And this happens at a very important historical moment. After the death of King Solomon, you remember, right? The nation of Israel was divided into 2 distinct kingdoms, Israel to the north and Judah to the south. At that time, Micaiah was there, amidst all of this. The kingdom of Israel was ruled by Ahab, while the kingdom of Judah had Jehoshaphat as king. It's one of those times in history that mark major political and social changes. And imagine this, Micaiah lived there in the northern kingdom, Israel, under the rule of Ahab. But the situation wasn't very peaceful, was it? There were many tensions, intrigues, and challenges faced by this brave prophet. It's incredible how he had to deal with all of this and still remain faithful to his prophetic mission. I'm impressed by how the Bible brings us stories so rich in detail and so full of meaning, isn't it? And Micaiah is certainly a figure worthy of being known and studied more closely. Look at this intriguing part of Micaiah's story. Although considered by the court of Israel as that prophet who only had things against King Ahab, in reality, the situation was a little more complex than that. Ahab, even knowing Micaiah's predictions and warnings, ended up feeling compelled to insult him before embarking on his campaign against the Syrians in that turbulent period. And you know what's more interesting? Ahab and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, had a certain bond, a family connection. Ahab's daughter was married to the son of Jehoshaphat. And this brought significant political consequences. When the northern kingdom, Israel, needed help in the battle against Syria, the southern kingdom, Judah, decided to get involved. After all, it was a matter that would not only impact the north but also bring advantages to the south. But look at King Jehoshaphat's wise attitude. Before embarking on this venture, he wanted to hear the Lord's will on the matter. It's a demonstration of faith and prudence, isn't it? It's incredible how these biblical accounts present us not only with historical events but also show us examples of leadership, discernment, and confidence in divine guidance. This part of the story is really intriguing. So, imagine this, King Ahab gathers a troop of 400 prophets to give their opinions on the situation, expecting unanimity. And wouldn't you know it, they all prophesy the Lord's blessing upon Ahab and guarantee Israel's victory in the battle against the Syrians? It's the kind of thing that seems like a green light, right? But the issue is that these 400 prophets, well, they weren't exactly prophets of God, you know? They were more like Ahab's prophets. And that's where it gets complicated. When Ahab directly asks whether he should go to war against Ramoth-Gilead, these prophets simply echo what he wanted to hear, saying that God would deliver victory into the king's hands. It's as if they were just echoing Ahab's desires, without really caring about God's will. It's interesting how this passage shows us the importance of discerning sources of guidance and the need to sincerely seek God's will amidst life's important decisions. Not always what seems like a clear sign is necessarily the right guidance, right? This story invites us to be more critical and attentive, especially when it comes to issues that affect our lives and the lives of those around us. Wow, it's like the story is coming to life, isn't it? So, after those prophets of Ahab, who were basically just echoing what he wanted to hear, King Jehoshaphat, who had a different sensitivity, was still in search of a more authentic guidance, so to speak. He wanted to hear the voice of a true prophet of the Lord. And that's where Micaiah, our protagonist, comes in. King Jehoshaphat reveals a bit about the kind of person Micaiah was. He knew that Micaiah wasn't the type to simply say what people wanted to hear. Oh no! Micaiah was different. He was known for speaking the truth, even if it was inconvenient. That's a rare quality, don't you agree? So, when Jehoshaphat asks if there isn't any other prophet of the Lord available, Ahab, in a way, reveals a mix of feelings about Micaiah. He sort of admits that there is a prophet available, but he's not very fond of the guy. He even says he hates him because, look at this, he never prophesies anything that is good to Ahab's ears. It's interesting how this passage shows us the dynamics between the leaders and the prophets of the time. It also shows how the truth isn't always welcome to those who prefer the convenience of sweet words. But Micaiah was different. He had the courage to say what needed to be said, even if it made him unpopular in the eyes of the king. So, what do you think Micaiah will say when consulted? It's enough to make anyone curious, don't you think? You know, this is one of those parts of the story that leaves us pensive, isn't it? Even though the Bible doesn't give us many details about who Micaiah was or how his ministry was, one thing is clear, he wasn't the type to say what people wanted to hear just to please them. Micaiah was a righteous man, committed to the Lord above all else. While Ahab was a powerful but wicked king, Micaiah didn't let himself be swayed by political pressures or the king's interests. He had an unwavering commitment to truth and divine justice. And look, Jehoshaphat's insistence ended up forcing Ahab, albeit reluctantly, to summon Micaiah. Just imagine the tension in that moment. And the messenger of Ahab who went to summon Micaiah, well, we can only imagine how he felt having to bring this prophet who wasn't exactly on the king's favorites list. It's incredible how this story shows us the importance of remaining faithful to principles, even when it means confronting authority figures or facing uncomfortable situations. Micaiah teaches us that supreme loyalty should always be to God's will, not to the whims of the powerful. And now, what will Micaiah have to say when he's finally consulted? It's enough to make anyone eager to find out. What a tense and dramatic moment. When Micaiah was summoned before Ahab, the atmosphere was heavy. Ahab, trying to intimidate him, made sure to remind Micaiah that the prophets of his court had already prophesied good things, so he should also follow suit, right? But Micaiah didn't falter. With unwavering determination, he responded simply and directly, almost as a challenge, "As the Lord lives, I will speak whatever my God tells me." What a powerful response, don't you think? He made it clear that his loyalty was to God, not to the pressures of the king or his court. And when finally before Ahab, the moment of truth arrived. Ahab wanted to know if the Israelites should go to war against the Syrians or not. And Micaiah's response? Well, he started with a touch of irony, suggesting that Ahab's troops would triumph over the Syrians. After all, according to him, he had never prophesied anything good for Ahab. It's incredible how Micaiah maintained his integrity and courage even in the face of pressure. He knew that his loyalty was to God, not to pleasing the powerful. And now, with this ironic response, he sets the stage to reveal what God really had to say about the situation. I can't wait to see how this will unfold. What a moment of tension and confrontation, isn't it? The king of Israel insisting that Micaiah not hide the truth is like a drama unfolding before our eyes. And then, finally, Micaiah can't hold back anymore and releases the prophecy he had been holding on to. He doesn't hold back and delivers the truth that the Lord had revealed to him. Micaiah speaks about the vision he had, seeing all of Israel scattered on the hills like sheep without a shepherd. It's such a vivid and symbolic image, don't you think? He's conveying the imminent chaos, the lack of leadership and direction awaiting the people of Israel. But look at Ahab's reaction, he couldn't care less about the prophetic message. He simply dismisses Micaiah's words, accusing him of having a personal grudge against him. But Micaiah doesn't let himself be shaken. He reaffirms that his words come directly from the Lord, and that even God had shown him that the predicted disaster was under divine sovereignty. It's a powerful reminder that even when we face difficult times and challenges, God is in control. And then he raises an intriguing point, talking about how even God allowed a lying spirit to speak. It's a profound reflection on the nature of truth and divine influence in human events. It's fascinating how this narrative makes us reflect on the relationship between the divine and the human, truth and falsehood, and God's sovereignty over all things. And now, with this prophecy released, what does the future hold for Ahab and the people of Israel? It's enough to make anyone eager to find out. It seems like the plot is getting even more intense, doesn't it? Micaiah, undaunted, continues with his prophecy, making it clear that his words come directly from the Lord. And then he describes this incredible vision he had, as if he's telling us a true epic film. He describes the Lord seated on his throne, with all the heavenly hosts around, ready to execute divine orders. It's such a powerful and symbolic scene, don't you think? And then, the Lord reveals what he is planning for Ahab, the king of Israel, and his mission in Ramoth-Gilead. But the interesting thing is that there's a kind of celestial debate going on. One suggests one thing, another suggests another, until finally a spirit presents itself before the Lord and offers to seduce Ahab. It's as if we're witnessing the behind the scenes of the divine plan unfolding, with all the pieces being carefully placed in their proper places. And that's what makes this story so fascinating, isn't it? It shows us not only the interaction between the divine and the human but also reminds us of the complexity of God's plans and the spiritual battle at stake. Micaiah continues with his vision, revealing that the Lord allowed a deceiving spirit to infiltrate the mouths of Ahab's prophets. It's as if we're watching a true celestial chess game, with God moving his pieces according to his plans. And then, Zedekiah, one of the leaders of Ahab's prophets, doesn't accept Micaiah's words. He simply doesn't want to hear the truth and even goes so far as to assault him. It's a shocking demonstration of how the truth is often rejected and even fought against by those who prefer to live in illusion. And as if that weren't enough, Ahab, furious with Micaiah's prophecy, orders him to be immediately imprisoned and deprived of food and water until he returns victorious from the battle. It's a gesture of despair and arrogance on the part of the king, who doesn't want to face reality and prefers to silence any dissenting voice. This story shows us not only Micaiah's courage in speaking the truth, even when it costs him dearly, but also warns us about the dangers of spiritual blindness and human arrogance. What a striking contrast in the story. So, we have these 400 prophets in Ahab's court, always ready to please him and say exactly what he wanted to hear. It's almost like a group of people who just agree with everything the boss says, isn't it? But then comes Micaiah, the fearless one. He's not interested in bowing to the king's wishes. When Ahab plans a war against Syria, these 400 prophets are already there, full of optimism, guaranteeing a great victory. But Micaiah, he's different. He doesn't care about popularity or what people want to hear. He speaks the truth, no matter what. And wouldn't you know it, Micaiah delivers a very direct prophecy? He warns that this war will be a disaster and that Ahab will meet his end in it. It's a harsh message, but necessary. And of course, the 400 prophets didn't like it one bit. They try to silence Micaiah. After all, he's going against their consensus and directly challenging the king's power. It's fascinating how this story shows us the importance of maintaining integrity, even when it means going against the tide. Micaiah reminds us that the truth is often not popular but still vital. I can't wait to see how he will deal with this pressure and what the future holds for Ahab and the people of Israel. Wow, this story really shows us the importance of courage and honesty, doesn't it? Even in the face of pressure from the powerful and opposition from the other prophets, Micaiah remains firm in his prophecy, unshaken. It's admirable to see how he doesn't yield to threats or violence but continues to speak the truth that God commanded him. And look, it's a powerful reminder for all of us. Sometimes, following God's will means going against the current, challenging expectations, and even facing opposition from those around us. But that's what truly makes us courageous and upright. As for what happened to Micaiah after prophesying against King Ahab, well, things didn't get easy for him. He was imprisoned and thrown into prison, facing the consequences of his fidelity to the divine truth. But that didn't deter him. He remained faithful to the Lord, even in the most difficult circumstances. It's incredible how this story inspires us to follow Micaiah's example, to be courageous and honest in our pursuit of God's will, no matter what we face. It's like this part of Micaiah's story leaves us full of questions, doesn't it? After being thrown into prison for his brave prophecy against Ahab, we don't have many details about how long he stayed there. It's like a mystery, one of those stories that leave us curious. The text of 2 Chronicles 18 verse 26 gives us an interesting clue. It mentions that Ahab ordered Micaiah to be kept with bread and water in prison until he returned safely from the battle. This suggests that Micaiah may have been released from prison after Ahab's defeat and death. It's as if he was set free when the threat he prophesied against no longer existed. But that's where the suspense lies. The Bible doesn't exactly tell us what happened to Micaiah after that. There are no records of his death, nor of him writing books or teaching others. It's as if his story ended in a question mark, leaving us to wonder what became of the fate of this brave prophet after his prophecy against Ahab. It's fascinating how even